What's up, Eager to Pleasers? Welcome back to another episode of the Eager to Please podcast. Before I introduce this week's amazing guest, I wanted to give a shout out to our sweet friends over at Fresh Starts Registry, Olivia and Jenny. They made today's episode possible. I'm so grateful for their support behind the work we're doing on the Eager to Please podcast. So after you're done listening here, please go give them a follow. They're taking this notion of new beginnings to another level, and they're kicking ass while doing it. So now that I have your interest piqued, I won't keep you waiting any longer. With over 30 years of experience, joining me today is nationally recognized psychotherapist, author of the upcoming book Unhitched, the essential divorce guide for women that we'll be diving into in a bit, and public speaker specializing in helping women navigate the emotional journey of divorce is Oona Metz. Another great resource I wish I had when I was going through my own. Oona, it's so great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Likewise. So I would love to start by having you share a little bit about yourself and how you got into social work.
Oh, great. Well, I would always say I've been a social worker from a very early age, but then I've been a paid social worker.
That's right.
Yes, since my 20s. I graduated from college. I had 2 jobs after college, a year each, and really knew that this was the path I wanted to take. And so went to social work school at a pretty young age, just at 24.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this has been your calling, I guess, then forever.
This has been my calling. Yes.
Ironically, I have a friend, also a therapist and a past podcast guest, who's a big supporter of group therapy. And I'm curious, as I'm sure some of our other listeners are too, how does group therapy differ from individual therapy, and are there benefits to choosing one over the other?
Oh, well, I absolutely love being a group therapist, and I think there's so many benefits. So after I completed my master's in social work, I went through a 5-year-long training program to learn the specifics about being a group therapist.
Okay.
So, and then I've been immersed in the group therapy world ever since. I think there are huge benefits to group. You know, I have some colleagues who say everybody who's in therapy should be in a group, and I don't quite go that far. But I think, you know, for the past 15 years, I've been running these divorce support groups, and they've been so incredibly helpful to the people who've been in them. And I really see such a huge benefit. I mean, I think ideally people should, if they're going through a divorce, should be in individual therapy and a divorce support group. But frankly, if they could only pick one, I almost would say the divorce support group for many people would be my choice.
Wow.
Because it's so helpful in reducing isolation and building connection. I think people going through divorce often feel so isolated, and they're feeling so much. You know, we think, oh, well, divorce is a legal or a financial process. Well, actually, it's a really profound emotional process too. And I think it's one that, like a lot of experiences in life, like really people who are also going through it understand it in a very different way.
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients have very loving, well-meaning friends and family who are not going through divorce and don't quite know how to support them as well as the people in the support group.
Absolutely. I would agree with the whole isolation piece. Just because, like you said, people don't know how to approach you. I was going to talk about this in a bit, but this was the perfect segue into it. Interestingly enough, after my divorce, I would say probably about 95% of our joint friends that we had as a couple have not even reached out to me or even addressed the fact that we're divorced. But also the flip side of that, it took me almost 2 years to say my ex-husband and to be comfortable saying that, just because of all of the emotions that you feel when you're going through a divorce. You know, you're embarrassed, you're upset, well, even stronger than upset. You're devastated, you know.
Devastated,
Yeah, exactly. Your life blew up and you don't even know where to start at that point. So that is a great point. The whole isolation piece is huge.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's, I know that for many people, they do especially lose couple friends.
Yes.
Those friends that are couples.
Yeah.
I think couples oftentimes really like to hang out with other couples. And so that can be really tough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
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 And there's still so much shame and stigma associated with divorce, even though it shouldn't be, right? It's a life transition, and we shouldn't have shame and stigma associated with it.
Exactly.
And that's one of my passions. I feel like the more we can talk about it, the more we can reduce the shame and stigma about it.
Absolutely. Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, another one of the hats that you wear is public speaking. And I saw that you just led a discussion to a sold out conference on the topic of unhappily ever after and why women are leading the way out of marriages. I mean, I could share my own personal reasons, but I'm only one person. I'm curious what the deal is. What are you seeing in your practice as well as in the research that you're doing on this subject that's causing nearly, I think it was 70% of women that I saw initiate separation?
Right. It's not 70% of women who initiate it, but it's in divorces. 70% of in divorces with straight couples. 70% of the time, it's the women who initiate.
Okay.
So, I was just at the Massachusetts Conference for Women, which is an amazing conference. And I highly recommend people attend that if they get a chance. And that was my topic. And one of the things I talked about, divorce professionals for a long time have kind of talked about the 3 A's of divorce, which are abuse, addiction, and affairs. And I think we're all pretty familiar with those reasons that people initiate, men and women both initiate divorce. Infidelity, affairs and infidelity. And infidelity can be, I would say, also romantic, emotional, or financial betrayals. And then addiction is pretty clear. And I would add on to that, like untreated mental illness or mental health diagnoses that are untreated. That can be a big cause. And then abuse, which is physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. We see that a lot. And I think, really important to talk about the fact that is not just happening in one particular zip code. That happens regardless of education, regardless of income. And I think if you just pay attention to the media, the media will say, oh, well, the media in the movies, right? The person who's physically abused is like a poor woman kind of living in a rundown trailer or something. And her husband comes home in the pickup truck and knocks her around. Right. But, we certainly know, and I've certainly seen in my practice all the time, it can happen in the suburbs when somebody's, guy's driving home in his Mercedes and is abusive. So those are the 3 A's: addiction, abuse, and affairs. But what I've seen in my practice, and I run support groups in my practice, so I've seen like hundreds of women in the last 15 years through the process of divorce. What I also see a lot of is really this inequality in the parenting and taking care of the house and the kind of emotional life of the family. I think that women have made a tremendous amount of progress. We still have a ways to go, but we've made a lot of progress in terms of income and career. And I think that men haven't caught up yet in terms of parenting and home care. And so many of the women I see say, my husband was really more like another child in the house than an actual partner. And they get to the point where they're just tired of asking over and over and over and over again. And they're exhausted, So, and that's not like just something that happens one week and somebody files for divorce, right?
Exactly. Yes.
But it's like a pattern. Yes. A pattern of years and years and years.
Absolutely.
And then I would say the 5th thing that I see a lot of too is this real extreme passivity, especially with husbands, where I see women who are married to highly educated men who are unemployed or underemployed for long periods of time, but then not taking up the slack at home. Like they might be unemployed or underemployed for a year or 2 years, but then they're also not doing anything at home. Or guys who are fully employed, but then they're just so passive in the marriage or in the family and kind of not participating.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the major things that I'm seeing as the reasons why women are initiating divorce.
Mm-hmm. I would say that I probably relate to those last 2 points. Fortunately, and it is very, very sad to hear when, abuse or addiction, that kind of thing plays a role into why the woman feels she needs to get out of the marriage. But yes, I totally felt disconnected from my spouse. And yes, 100%. In fact, I just listened to a conversation with Gemma Hartley and Cindy DiTiberio, which I think...
Oh, yes. Love them.
Yes, absolutely. Which I know, like I said, before we hopped on the recording, that this community is so large, but so small once you start listening to all these, tidbits that people have to share. And they just had a conversation on, is marriage worth it? And I don't want to give away any spoiler alerts, because I think our listeners should go and listen to that conversation if you really want to know the answer. And to everyone, it's a personal choice, obviously. Like I'm not advocating for divorce at all, because I do feel like marriage is a special thing that two people can share. When it's right and when it fits.
When it's right.
Yeah.
When it's healthy.
Exactly.
When it works.
Exactly. But funny enough, I read in one of your articles that women are more likely to not get remarried after they're divorced than men are. And I bet that's back too. And so I'm curious, what are you finding the reason is for that? Why women don't want to get remarried?
They don't want to pick up somebody's socks again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the easy way to say it. But, I think marriage is really good for men, right? And oftentimes it's their biggest emotional connection is with their spouse, right? Their wife. And, we have all that research from Harvard that shows that marriage for men improves their lives financially, physically, psychologically, and a healthy and really good marriage for women can do that too. But I think oftentimes for women, getting married just means that they get busier,
Yeah.
And so I think for the women that I see, some of them are eager to date again or occasionally they're eager to marry. But a lot of them are like, I just want to be free, right?
Yes,
they're really loving being free. And a lot of them are like, I'd like to find somebody to go out to dinner with on Saturday nights. And maybe we'll take a weekend trip sometimes, but I don't want to live with anybody again.
Yes. Yeah. Something, if it's okay that I share, that I read that you had written too, you said women marry men hoping that they'll change, while men marry women hoping that they won't change, which I find so funny, because the problems in the marriage intensify when he doesn't want to change, but she does. And I honestly feel like that's kind of where I fell in this whole, in my whole journey, and seeing this, in your practice, I'm sure all the time, women are growing, and evolving, like you just said earlier, and the men are not catching up to that mentality.
Right.
So
Right. And I think in the beginning of the marriage, it feels easier to like, okay, that's fine. I'll do the cooking and whatever. But I mean, one big change point, I think, in any marriage is when kids arrive. And parenting adds on, a gazillion more percentage of work, right? Like It's really different to have two people in a house and to keep the house clean and keep everybody fed than it is to have, 4 or 5 people in the house and try to meet all of those needs. And I think that's really the point at which things can take a turn, in a marriage, and where people have to be very, very conscious of what's happening, and who's doing what in the house and who's doing what with parenting.
Exactly.
And not make the woman into the default parent and the default social scheduler and the default emotional keeper of the
100%.
house.
Absolutely. Which is the perfect segue into your new book called Unhitched, The Essential Divorce Guide for Women. That's going to be out in the world January 13th of 2026. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here just for a second, because I'm noticing a trend here with your themes, the unhappily ever after, the unhitched, the words. Yes. Right. And, because it's such a difficult topic to talk about. And I love that you are such an advocate for bringing light to it and wanting to talk about it, because the more we do, the more comfortable we can be. Like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, my friends or our joint friends had no idea how to approach that because it's awkward. Yes. And so I know that was completely random, but thought that was an intentional choice of words for you, because divorce literally is an uncoupling. And your new book sounds like it's an amazing resource and helpful tool that we should have access to in whatever stage of the divorce process we're in. So I'm curious, what inspired you to write it?
Such a great question. So I as I had mentioned, I was running these 3 support groups in my practice. I'm still running them today for 15 years. And after 15 years of 3 groups every single week, I had amassed a huge amount of information in my head about the emotional journey of divorce, right? And so every week I would be running these groups, and afterwards I would just think to myself, God, that's such an important thing that person said in the group tonight. And boy, that really hit a chord. Or, that was it seemed like the thing that I said was so impactful, and it really helped this one member of the group or whatever. So I was just kind of keeping track in my head. And then I thought to myself, maybe I should just start writing these things down. So then I started writing down all of these interesting and kind of impactful statements and ideas that were coming out of the group. And finally, I had so many of them. I was trying to keep track of them all and write them all down. And I thought, I better write a book so that I can think about something else. I don't have to keep track of them in my mind. The other thing that was happening is that women kept asking me for a book. And I had a book that I recommended in the old days, but it was written in 1992. And it just got more and more outdated. Right. And so, I would be meeting with somebody to see if they wanted to be in my group. And they would say, I really need to figure out how to tell my kids. And I would think, well, that would be a good thing to have in the book, right? Or I really need to know, I really want to think about this idea about forgiveness. And well, that's a good thing. So anyway, I finally just decided I've got to write a book. I had no idea. I had never published a thing in my life. I had no idea how to write a book or how to write an article, but I put my mind to it, and the words poured out onto the computer, not onto the page, but onto the computer, and the rest is history. And it all came together.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite highlights? If you can share with us, some snippets that people could be looking forward to when they get their hands on this book in January.
So one of the things I thought, there are 2 things I really thought about very hard when I was writing this book. One is that sometimes when you're going through an intense emotional experience, like a divorce or a death or anything like that, it can be hard to read, especially reading dense text.
Yes.
And I know that from talking to a lot of my clients. And so I really wanted to make this book accessible and something that would be easy to read. And so I really thought about kind of breaking it up into kind of easy chunks of reading. And I wanted to provide really clear kind of psychological information that wasn't in jargon. It was just like real language, like really from the heart. So But I also know that women are so isolated in their divorce. And I wanted to almost like give them the feel of being in a support group. And I know that when women read stories of other women going through divorce, it can really help them feel less alone and less crazy, right?
Yeah.
And so in the book, I have really divided it into kind of 3 different components. And one is just like really straight from the heart psychological advice and tips about the emotional journey. But I've really interspersed it quite heavily with vignettes. Mm-hmm. And they're all like very realistic vignettes. They're all composites. I didn't want to in any way, violate the privacy or confidentiality of my group members.
Sure.
But I've heard literally thousands of stories in my career. So I just kind of went and combined them all in a way into different vignettes. And so people can really relate. And then there's also exercises, because I think it's important to not only go through something that's so emotionally laden, but then be able to like be curious about your own reactions and learn from it and reflect at some point, Mm-hmm. So I hope that people will take the time to also do some of the exercises in the book and hang on to the book over time, because they may read it once and then pick it up again in 6 months and it feels like they're in a different place, and pick it up in a year and they're in a different place. And hopefully when they feel really like they're through the divorce enough, they'll give the book away. I really want people to buy the book, and then I want people to give the book away. Don't keep it on your shelf for the next 20 years. Yep. Keep it for as long as you need it, and then give it away to a friend who needs it. And if you don't have a friend who needs it, give it to your local library or your local women's shelter. There are people out there who will really benefit from reading this book. So I hope people will use it, get a lot out of it, and then share it.
For sure. Yes. I love the advice piece and then the actionable items piece, because I definitely feel like putting things into practice helps it become more of a routine. And, it's just like getting up off the couch, little baby steps when you feel like I just can't do it. I can't do it. Just little baby steps to keep moving you forward. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So there's some exercises where you're setting goals for yourself, or there's some exercises where you're giving yourself a little checklist, a to-do checklist, or, so just trying to be helpful and keep you kind of organized and on top of things.
Absolutely. So, yeah. I have a friend who said, it was something, I'm probably not going to get his words exactly right, but it's just like, one small step. It doesn't have to be this, big, profound thing, because then you get overwhelmed. And being in a situation like a divorce or a huge life change like that, it does seem very overwhelming at times. And so these checklists are probably the perfect thing for someone, just to be like, okay, just do one thing. And just seeing that check mark go on that list means like, hey, yay, I accomplished something.
Got that done.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep. Yeah. And I also designed the book in such a way that you don't have to read it from start at page 1 and go to the end. Okay. People can really kind of look at the table of contents and see where they are in the process, because this book is good for people who are contemplating, or who are in the messy middle, or who have already gotten divorced. And so if you're, at that point where you're so worried about your kids, you can skip right ahead to the kids chapter.
Yes.
Or if you don't have kids, you can skip those chapters. Mm-hmm. Or if you're interested in, how do I initiate a divorce? How do I have that first conversation? You can go to one of those first chapters. But maybe you're already done with your divorce, but you're just thinking about dating, and what do you need to think about with dating? Go to the dating chapter, so a little something for everyone.
Yeah, that's super helpful, that it does essentially encompass everything from the little thought that might be like, maybe we do need to head down this path to, okay, it's done now, and I'm doing the work, and I think I'm ready to start sharing my life with someone else. So excellent. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yes. I know you said earlier that you're not really an author or a writer, but I do know that you've put out a few articles over the past maybe year or two.
I became one.
Exactly.
I became one.
Absolutely.
For anybody who thinks they can't be a writer, well, I started at the ripe old age of 55, so you can do it too.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Well, I've enjoyed reading those because it really helped me with getting a gut check on what I was feeling was actually normal, and I wasn't just this person who's blowing up my life and my kid's life because I'm just crazy and I need to get it together. And one of the articles that I've read that really stuck with me because, we're in this month on the podcast that I'm calling Learning to Love Yourself Again. And your article was very timely because it was exactly called that. Like, what are some ways that we can feel lovable after divorce when you just feel like absolute crap, like you're like, man, maybe I'm not lovable. Maybe this was my fault. Maybe I'm the problem. Would you mind sharing some of your
Yeah. And I think, there's a difference between feeling unloved and unlovable. Right? Because somebody can feel unloved after or during a divorce, but still feel like they're lovable in the world. But when I think, especially if you've gone through a really tough marriage or a really tough divorce, it can leave people feeling unlovable. And I think that's really important that's a really important time to kind of address what's going on between you and you, because we're all lovable in some way. And I think the first thing, sometimes people say, well, you have to do your own work,
Yes.
but we are also people who are in connection with other people. And one of the ways you feel lovable is by seeing yourself in a mirror of somebody else. And if you've been in a difficult marriage, what you've seen reflected back to you might be that you're unlovable. And so one of the things I really recommend is that you surround yourself with people who think you're great. So you really try to figure out who in your life, because there are people in your life who do really appreciate you, and it doesn't have to be all of you, but it might be some colleagues who think you're great at work, or your kids who think you're a great mom, or your best friend from college who remembers that spark that you had in college, and you reconnect to that person to really, so that you're looking in a mirror and what the mirror is reflecting back is that you're a lovable person.
Nice. Yeah.
I also think it's so important to connect to what are the old things in your life that gave you joy? Because oftentimes people give those up in a marriage, right? Mm-hmm. Like in their 20s, they loved karaoke, or they loved doing pottery, or they loved, taking walks in nature. What were those things that you loved before you got married that maybe you gave up or that morphed? And to see if you can go back to those things that give you joy, because that will also help to help you feel that way. And then I think, I'll always recommend, as a therapist, I'm always going to recommend seeing a therapist too,
of course,
to really help you, work through some of those issues.
Mm-hmm. One of the traps I think I fell in my marriage was, as you said, giving up things that you love. It's because I felt guilty for wanting to go and do it, because I'm like, well, my role is to make sure the kids are taken care of and the home is taken care of, and my needs then became backseat. And so at some point along this almost 20-year marriage was like, who am I as a person? Am I supposed to just be the stay-at-home mom and cook and clean and pick up socks and whatever else? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm an educated woman. Where is this going? So right. For many, many people, picking up socks does not bring joy. Right. Exactly.
And I think as women, we're so socialized to really be thinking about the other person, right? We're thinking about our spouse. We're thinking about our kids. We're thinking about our boss. We're thinking about our family members and how do we help them? And it's like we come last in line. And I think divorce, as devastating and stressful as it can be, it also offers a real opportunity to think again about what it is that you need and you want and you like. Right?
Right.
One of the exercises that I sometimes tell women to do is I want you to go to the grocery store and just spend 20 minutes slowly walking through the aisles and thinking about what it is that you like. What do you like to eat? Not what is your spouse like? Not what are your kids like? But like what foods really do you actually like that you want to buy for yourself, right?
That is interesting, yeah.
How many moms are like, they're eating the leftover chicken nuggets that their kids didn't eat, right? They're not thinking about what do I really like, right? Yeah. They give up spicy foods because their kids don't like spicy foods. You know, they give up whatever the things are, right?
Yes.
Right?
Oh, my word, yes. Because my kids are exactly like that. They don't want to try anything new. And I'm like, can we not have pizza and mac and cheese and chicken nuggets every single week? I'm like, wow. Yes,
Right. So go to the spice aisle and go get some, kale or whatever it is that your kids hate to eat.
Exactly.
Go get some sushi.
Oh yeah. Oh well, I guess my kids were spoiled in that respect because they will eat some sushi.
They love sushi
a little bit, not like the super exotic stuff. But,
right. The California rolls.
Yes,
they're fine
exactly.
With. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have covered so much great stuff today. And so I wanted just to take a minute to open the floor up to you since I've been kind of prodding, for your knowledge about some of this stuff. Are there any last minute words of wisdom that you want to share to our listeners or anything else about the book that you would love people to know about?
Well, we have a whole bunch of events coming up regarding the book, and I hope people could, certainly go to my website, which is UnaMetz.com, and all of those articles that Natalie has mentioned are there on my website. I have a lot of free resources. You don't have to put in your email in order to get my free resources. You can just read articles, listen to podcasts like this one and others that I've been on. And it would be wonderful to see you at an event in Boston or New York or Vermont. And hopefully we'll have more on the docket too as we go forward.
Amazing. So, yes, I will make sure we link all of your information to the podcast so people can find you there. And you're also on LinkedIn and Instagram. Is that correct?
Yep. That's right. LinkedIn and Instagram. Yep. As
Perfect.
Oona Metz. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Oona, for joining me. It's been great chatting with you.
Oh, I've loved our conversation. Thank you so much.